All right, let's walk through how to pull dates from any document and add them automatically to your calendar. So for this, we're using Zapier, and I'll walk you through how to pull really any piece of data from a document and do anything you want with it. The easiest way to show how to do that is in a practical system like this. So in this context, what we're doing is taking deadlines from a real estate purchase contract and automatically adding them to a calendar. So great for real estate agents. You can see, when an offer is accepted, you can just email that to yourself, automatically have all the dates synced with your calendar, make sure you're not missing anything. Then you'll have access to that on your phone. You'll get the Google Calendar alerts and have all of that automated for you. But then I'll walk through as well how to pull out different variables, if there's other things you're looking for, how to pull that out, and you'll understand how to maybe automate other processes with items that you pull out of whatever document you're using. So a couple things we need to build this out. This is what the full system will look like when it's complete, and I'll walk through this whole thing before we build it together. First thing you'll need is a Zapier account. So Zapier is a business automation platform. You can connect any apps you want, basically chain them together. You can say, when this happens, do this, and do this and this. So in this case, we're linking Gmail, this platform called Cloud Convert, ChatGPT, and then we're running it down to Google Calendar and potentially sending another email. So there's thousands and thousands of apps linked with Zapier. So totally worth setting up an account if you have any interest in this kind of business automation. So you can set up a free account. The downside to that is, one, you're throttled to 100 tasks a month, which is fine for something like this. We wouldn't need more than 100 tasks a month. The frustrating thing, though, is they only let you do two-step zaps. And as you can see, this is a lot more than 2 steps. So which tab is that? Sorry, toggling with hotkeys. So you will need a professional plan on Zapier. So that starts at $20 a month. 750 tasks a month is plenty. The main thing we need, though, is the multi-step apps and premium apps. So you will need a paid Zapier account. Everything else in here we can do for free. So let's jump into building this from the top. We'll log into Zapier. Up in the top left, click Create, Zap. And then the trigger will be Gmail. Let's jump into here, Gmail. And we're looking for a new email matching search. Let me select this Gmail account. So I've already got a couple I've set up with my Zapier account. When you select this, it'll pull you over to Google, and you'll choose which accounts you want to link with Zapier, and then you can use them in any future builds that you're doing. So keywords, I'm going to say in inbox, so it's not pulling from my archived, my trash. If I move this to a folder later, it's not going to continue pulling it, because you can see right here we've got it on a 2-minute system. So every 2 minutes, it's just going to check through my email quick, see if it can find this, and if it doesn't find anything, it won't do anything. But we don't want it to be repeatedly pulling this. So in my inbox, say Jake Cal. And I do the asterisks to make sure it's not something that might, in any situation come up from a normal email. I don't want somebody else to email me and trigger this whole automation. So I do the asterisks just to make sure I'm the only one sending something like that to myself. So we'll do that, and let's test it to see if it pulled up. And we've got one. Okay. So over here, I did send myself an email with, a fake purchase contract I just put together so that we can walk through this together. And you can see I just typed that in here. And in this, you can see I did Jake's Cal. And our trigger here was Jake Cal. So as long as we have extra, it will still work. So we've got the apostrophe S that we didn't specify, but we still have Jake Cal in there. If we were missing a letter, it would not activate. But if we have more than is asked for, but it includes the main trigger, it'll still work. So the next step, once we've got the email, is we need to send it to this platform called Cloud Convert. So let me show you what Cloud Convert is. So it's cloudconvert.com. You can do up to 10 conversions a day. So you'll just want to come here, set up a free account, and then we'll link this with Zapier once you're all set up. So cloudconvert.com, set up a free account here, and then our action event is we're going to convert a file. So before we get any further in here, let me jump back to this full thing and explain what we're doing. So we grab the email, we convert it from a PDF or whatever file type to a PNG image. And the reason we do that is because ChatGPT, with its image recognition software, it can only work if it's in an image format. So I've found it works best with .png files. Sometimes it takes JPEG files. If you're using, the main user interface, you can upload a PDF or any file type, and it'll still work fine. But what they do is they actually take that PDF, convert it to an image, and then they're able to scan it. And since we're using a third-party system like Zapier to access ChatGPT, we just have to do that step ourselves. So we're taking the PDF, converting it to a PNG format, sending it to ChatGPT, and then we come in and we say, these are all the variables that I want you to pull out of this document. So in this case, we've got a little extra. If we wanted, we could trim this down just to the deadlines. But this gives you a little more flexibility with what you want to do. So we've got the property address, buyer, seller, all the deadlines, listing agent, buyer's agent, and the sales price. So that's all stuff that we can work with later on in this flow. And then we run a little bit of code that just says take the output from ChatGPT and break each of those into an individual variable that we can use later on in this. And then we split it into paths, and we just say, does this deadline exist? So we check for that variable. We say, did we get a due diligence deadline? If we did, it'll add it to our calendar here. If we did not get it, it will send us an email back and say, hey, I couldn't find a due diligence deadline. So that's just a little bit of error handling so we can make sure we know if something got missed. And if you wanted to, you could even add a step here to email yourself and say, hey, this was successfully added to your calendar for this date. So really it just depends how much confirmation you want from the system. The way I have it set up now, it just says if it exists, add it to the calendar. If it does not exist, email me and let me know. And a lot of the time that'll happen kind of intentionally. If somebody's sending in a cash offer for a real estate purchase, there will not be a financing and appraisal deadline, and so every time that happens, it'll email us and say, I didn't find this, and in that case, it's not an error, but it's good to know that it's not filling in fake data and adding stuff to your calendar. So this is what the full thing looks like. This will be the bulk of the work, and then we really just need to build out one of these, and we'll copy and paste it 4 times. So let's jump back into here. So we've got Cloud Convert. We'll convert a file. And then when we configure it, we're looking for the attachment from our Gmail. So we'll search attachment. Let's click all attachments here. The output format, we want PNG. So we'll click that, and the input format. If you want to leave this blank, it will accept all file types, or you can specify PDF. So I will leave this blank just so it can handle more that we throw at it, even though nearly everything I get in this context is going to be a PDF document. And then the file name, if we want to keep the same file name, let's do attachment file name. Or if you want to rename it after it's been through here, then you can add a new name here. So we'll say wait, yes. That just means that it will not move on to the next step until this conversion is completed. So wait, yes. Let's test this step to make sure it works. Okay, perfect. So that was a success. We'll move on to the next step, which is ChatGPT. So let's choose an event, and we're going to say analyze image content with vision. So one extra step you'll need to take here, if you've got a ChatGPT account, which you will need for this, let's see, ChatGPT. Okay, so if you go to chatgpt.com, you can set up an account with Google. Once you've done that, you'll go to platform.openai.com. So OpenAI, is the parent company of ChatGPT. So you'll want to go to platform.openai.com. You'll click login. I'll show you what this looks like. Okay, so we'll log in here with Google. And I'm doing this with my free account specifically to show you that it will still work with a free ChatGPT account. You're welcome to set up a paid account. I've got a separate paid account that you can do a little more usage with it. Again, you've got much more limited usage with a free account, but for the use case that we're doing now, a free account will work fine. So coming in here, let's go to dashboard. And then over here on the left, we will need API keys. So we'll come up and create a new key. We'll just say Zapier calendar key. Create a secret key. And then you'll copy and paste this into this step. So let me change the account to show you what this is going to look like. Okay, so we'll ask you for an API key. You will paste that into here. So I'll jump back here, API keys, copy, and paste that here as your API key, and then click yes, continue, and that will link your ChatGPT account to Zapier. So I'm going to delete that now so that doesn't get used. And I'm going to move forward with this account that's already linked. So I'll click continue here. And then the prompt is pretty heavy. So I've got this Google Doc set up so I can copy and paste the exact prompts and the code and everything you'll need to build this out quick. So let's jump into ChatGPT and grab this prompt that we built. Copy, paste. There we go. Okay, so it's a pretty heavy prompt. You might want to customize this a little bit. So I just updated the context to say I'm a real estate agent who needs this data for whatever. Let me go get a drink. I'll be right back. Okay, not losing my voice. I'm back. So we've got the role, task, input, specifics, context, and examples. So the examples is where we'll specify exactly what information we want from the contract that we'll be able to use later on. And then just some extra notes. This is kind of my error correction. So I'll run this a couple times. Anytime I notice that it's making mistakes, I just add a new bullet point in the notes section. And then run it again to make sure that corrected it. So some of these seem kind of silly, like your intelligent document assistant that specializes in this specific thing. Believe it or not, each one of these does improve the performance just a tiny bit. So this is kind of a tried and true system to get the best performance for a very specific task. So even the context explaining why this needs to be done seems to improve the performance even just a small fraction, which is great. Anything we can do to minimize errors and make sure it works every single time is worth it. So here's the full prompt. You can copy and paste this into yours, and I will do that here. And then the image will be the file that we got from Cloud Convert. So task result files. Continue. We'll test that to make sure it gets the data we want and gives us the output. So while that's scanning, we'll go back to here. So the output, we're asking for this in a JSON format. So JSON, it's JavaScript object notation. All that means is this format, which is a curly bracket at the start and end, and then we've got a bunch of key value pairs. So the key being this first item, the value is the actual value of it. So property address is the key. We've got this colon here, and then the full address. Buyer names is the key. The value are the actual buyer names. So not complicated. It just makes it so we can interact with that with our code in the next step. So that was a success. And there's our output. Perfect. So now let's jump down here and code. We will click on run Python. Continue. Input data. JSON input, I think is what we name that. So let's jump here and we will copy and paste this code as well. Okay, so JSON input is just the name of a variable that we reference in here. And then that will be the entire chunk of information we get from ChatGPT. So let's copy this whole thing and I'll drop that in here so you can copy and paste this into your system. And then we'll paste that here as well. And then the item we need to reference here is the image analysis from ChatGPT. So we've got that. Let's click continue, test, and we'll make sure that works. Okay, awesome. So we've got that, and next is where we break this into paths. So we'll come here, and we'll go paths. Path A, we're going to do one more path here. Path, okay. So up here, the path condition, we're going to say always run, because we always want it to continue down this path. We're not looking for anything specific yet. Always run. Okay. And then down here is where we're going to say only continue if we have the information we want. So we'll start out with the seller disclosure deadline. Let's look for here. Seller disclosure deadline. We'll grab that. So we'll say only continue if this deadline exists. Continue. And then if it does exist, we'll go to calendar, create a detailed event, and I will choose my real estate calendar. The summary, so this will be the title of it. We'll say, let's grab the variables here. So we'll grab the property address. Property address. Let's say seller disclosure deadline for property address. All right, no conferencing, start date and time, that will be this, so we'll say, where'd it go? There we are. And then I do want to call it an all-day event, because it still needs an end date and time, so we'll grab that again, seller disclosure deadline. Okay, so start date and end date are both going to be this deadline. Make it an all-day event. No repeating, no attendees. And then I like to say yes, use default reminders. So what this does is it just adds your Google Calendar default to the event, meaning if you've set it up to send you an email 72 hours or 24 hours before an event, it will do that for these. Or you can add custom reminders to each event, and there's no guests, so this doesn't really matter. So I'll click continue here, and then let's test this step to make sure this works. All right, it says that was sent to Google Calendar. So let me refresh this. Jump over to here. Okay, cool, that worked. So we've got seller disclosure deadline for property address, and then the description just says seller disclosure deadline is today. So that worked, and now let's continue mapping this out. So I like to rename this just so I can keep track of what's going where. So I'll say seller disclosure deadline exists. And we'll come over here, rename does not exist. And then here we'll say only continue if this deadline does not exist. Okay. It would not have continued because we did get it, so that's great. And then the next step, we want to email ourselves back if we didn't find the deadline. So I'll click the action event. I want to reply to email, continue, and the thread, let's see. We want to get the thread from here. So, okay, so all we needed to do here is change that from static to custom. So we'll add a custom value. We'll click on our initial email, and then let's search for thread. Thread ID is what we want. So we'll add the thread ID from the first email, so then it knows to respond specifically to that email if it's letting us know we missed something. And then we don't need to add a to because it does that automatically. And let me just confirm here. So on that, I did add a to, but we're going to try running it without it and see if that still works. From shouldn't matter either, but I'll do that just to be safe. From, say Zapier, so we know where that's coming from. Okay. And then down here, let's open up Gmail. No, we'll open up code here. Code. And we'll say, let's just say seller disclosure deadline was not found for property. This is a mistake. Please add. Okay. Cool, so we've got that. We'll click continue. And we'll test this. Alright, it needs 1, 2. Okay, so we do need to add a to address. So again, let's come here and let's see who's the from. Okay, so whoever sent the email, which is myself, it will just respond to that. Okay, continue. Now we'll test that. And let's refresh here. Oh, thanks. Come here, refresh. Okay, so this is what it would look like. It would be from Zapier, even though it's me sending it to myself still. Seller disclosure deadline was not found. Okay, so that's the error message that we just put in there. All right, so we have this entire leg built out. Then what we're going to want to do is take this and duplicate. And we'll delete this. And then we'll take this and duplicate. And take this and duplicate again. Zoom out a little. Okay, so now we've got our 4 paths, and we can rename each of these. So we'll go seller disclosure deadline. And this one would be diligence deadline. Due diligence deadline. This path would be, let's see, come on. Now we're financing appraisal deadline. Appraisal deadline. Click out of here. The last one is our settlement deadline. Rename. Settlement deadline. Okay, and then we just go in and all we do is change each of the variables. So in here, instead of the seller disclosure deadline, we will grab our due diligence. So we'll say only continue if due diligence exists. And if it does, then add due diligence here. Due diligence deadline. Deadline. And we'll delete these. Python. Oops. Python. Due diligence deadline. And same thing here. Python. Due diligence deadline. Okay, and then everything else we can keep exactly the same. So we'll move over here. We'll say if due diligence deadline does not exist, we continue down here. And we've already got all this set up from the last step. We'll keep the thread, the to, the from, name, all of that the same. And then we'll just change this to say due diligence deadline was not found for this address. Okay, perfect. So then really all you're doing is that exact, these are giving me an error because I skipped the test instead of testing. Okay, so those are green now. So then you'll just do the exact same thing for financing and appraisal and the settlement deadline, and we're done. So if you wanted to add an extra step, you can totally customize this to meet whatever needs you've got. If you want, say, a confirmation step after this, we could, add another Gmail. We can send ourselves an email that says, we found this deadline. It was successfully added to your calendar for this property address. Or if you've got a totally different document, so I've kind of, customized this whole thing out for a real estate purchase contract. So if you've got a different document, just edit this prompt, edit the items you want it to find, and then you could use basically the same flow with a totally different document, different use case, pulling out different variables, and then you could plug in this same Python code to pull them out and be able to work with them within Zapier. So hopefully that was helpful. We did a little bit of troubleshooting, which you'll run into. So kind of a good thing when something goes wrong, you can see how we deal with it. Let me delete this step so that is cleaned up. So start to finish, how to pull deadlines from a PDF document and add them directly to your calendar. And let's just show this in practice now. So it's only going to work for these two deadlines because we haven't built these out. But I will click publish. Okay. Don't want to transfer any existing data. I'm going to rename this. We'll say Repsy deadlines to calendar. Okay, got that. And it is in use. So you can see it's turned on here. And let's just confirm the keywords we're searching for. So that is Jake Cal. I'll copy that. We'll jump into the email. So let's say I just received this email. Then I would forward it to myself. So I'll say Jake at, I think that's the email address this is. Okay, good. So we've got that. It can be anywhere in the email, so you can throw this in the subject line. You can just throw it in the body of the email. So I'll just paste it there, and we'll click send. And then let's jump over here, and we'll give it a couple seconds to trigger this. Back out of this, and let's open up my calendar. No, I don't want to share this calendar. Okay, so we've got the seller disclosure deadline. I think that was the one from the trial we were running, so let's give this just another second. Okay, I just had to wait 2 minutes because that was the timer we set. So it checks every 2 minutes. So our 2 minutes is up. We jump back to our calendar. We've got our seller disclosure deadline, and let's just make sure these are correct. We'll open this up. Okay, so seller disclosure deadline should be January 24th. And we've got that for the property address. Next, we've got our due diligence deadline, January 31st. Boom, got that. Perfect. So those first 2 branches we built out are working. You would just, again, update the variables in here, take you another 5 or 10 minutes, and then you've got the whole thing up and running. So hopefully that was helpful. If you have any issues, any questions, throw them in the comments. If there's other similar builds or totally different builds, something else you want to automate, put that in the comments as well. And I'll try to do 1 or 2 of these videos a week. Working on some bigger systems right now instead of, just a piece of the puzzle, especially when it comes to lead generation and lead follow-up. So keep an eye out for those in the next couple weeks. But beyond that, let me know how else I can help. Thanks, guys.